So here we go. Continue our walk through James. Today we're going to look at James 5, 1 through 7. And James is going to issue an incredibly strong warning about the misuse of wealth. Misuse. But before we do that, play a little game to kind of get ready for this. What would you say? Just imagine this crazy situation. It doesn't exist, but just imagine it. In all of northeast South Dakota, there are only 10 farmers. Just 10 farmers. They own all the land, millions of acres between 10 farmers, and they conspire together to keep the hourly wages of agricultural workers low. They got the market tied up. They won't pay more than a certain amount, and sometimes the wages are so low that they can't feed their families adequately, and sometimes paychecks arrive late, or sometimes they never show up. And these 10 farmers prevent any other farmers from starting up in all of our region. They try and keep commodity prices high for their own personal benefit, of course, and then they leverage and threaten all the suppliers to keep all their input prices low. And so for these 10 farmers owning millions of acres, their wealth is increasing rapidly, and everyone else's standard of living is going down. What would you say to that? That's more or less the situation that James is addressing, of course, in the ancient world. And as is before in his book, he gives some warnings. And the first warning is this: riches can bring terrible, trouble. Now, I have to admit, our culture teaches the opposite, right? Our culture teaches that riches bring incredible benefit. More money, more comfort. More money, less worry. More money, more fun. More money, more security. More money, life is just better. And we tend to believe what our culture teaches, to the extent that nobody here would voluntarily decrease their income, correct? Because the more money, the better. Now, I'm not saying that the Bible is in favor of poverty, but as we will see, it is true that we can use our wealth, or whatever riches we have, to either honor God or dishonor God. And James is very clear. He's addressing a situation in which rich people are dishonoring God by oppressing people. And this is what brings this warning. Look here, you rich people. Weep and groan because of all the terrible troubles ahead of you. Now, when people use their wealth in a God-honoring way, at the end, Jesus says to them, "Well done, good and faithful servant." When people use their wealth to simply amass more wealth in a way that robs their workers of a decent wage, James warns them that terrible trouble is ahead. Instead of blissful success, which they're anticipating, no, trouble's coming. Our culture believes the opposite. All wealthy people are headed for joy and comfort. Even wealthy who use their wealth to oppress and pay workers low wages and keep them low, everything will turn out fine for them because they're wealthy. James says, no. There's terrible trouble ahead for the wealthy who dishonor God and how they use their wealth. Of course, James has warnings. Warning, riches rot. Now you have to realize in the ancient world, clothing was the way you displayed your riches. So if you were a farm worker, you would have one, maybe two sets of clothes. That's it. And maybe one heavy outer cloak for warmth. If rich, we're rich in clothing. Too many sets of clothing to count, using imported fabrics that most people couldn't afford. But in the ancient world, with open-air living, there was an enemy of clothing that even the rich could not escape, and that was the moths. Your wealth is rotting away, and your fine clothes are moth-eaten rags. Those many sets of fine clothes were vulnerable. Moths are no respecter of wealth. The more clothes, the better, as far as they're concerned. We may think of wealth as being extremely secure, and James says it's all rotting away. Back in the 1920s, it's called the Roaring '20s in the U.S., and the economy was steamrolling along, and we thought our economy would be fantastic forever. And then 1929 came, stock market crash, Great Depression, and at one point 25% of people were unemployed. 25% crash. I remember the subprime mortgage collapse of 2008 when housing prices crashed, and I woke up in the morning and realized my home lost $50,000 in value. Interesting. Farmers know all about this. commodity prices are high, income is high, and then they go low, and income is slim. Moths can always find the fine clothes, and even while we all, including myself, seek financial security and safety, there is always financial uncertainty. But James is actually warning about more than economic uncertainty. He's warning that wealth can testify against us, which is confusing because we're taught wealth is always an advantage, right? Wealth's like a good friend, walks with you, helps you enjoy life. Wealth's like a loyal dog, is always with you, helps you make sure you enjoy life, keeps us company. Wealth is proof that we're successful, right? But James says that our wealth, if we use it to dishonor God, can testify against us, like we're on trial and our wealth is a witness against us. James writes, your gold and silver are corroded. The very wealth you were counting on will eat away your flesh like fire. This corroded treasure you have hoarded will testify against you on the day of judgment. I mean, makes sense. Corroded gold and silver lose value. Instead of giving security, James says wealth is like an out-of-control fire that will burn you. So instead of saving these rich people, James says their wealth will testify against them on the day of judgment. And this might have confused the people who first read James' letters, or maybe even you, because in the Old Testament, there are passages that talk about wealth as a blessing from God. For instance, Proverbs 10:22, the blessing of the Lord makes a person rich, and he adds no sorrow to it. Wealth, it's a blessing from the Lord, doesn't have any sorrow with it. Why is James saying that wealth will testify against these people on the day of judgment? Well, what makes this wealth a curse instead of a blessing? Why does sorrow come with this particular kind of wealth? Well, the clue is in the word hoarding. Here's a picture of a living room of a person who is hoarding books and magazines. A lot of stuff in one space, a lot of stuff that will never be used, a lot of stuff that can't even be found. I mean, a couple books on a coffee table and a few magazines on a magazine rack. Those will get read and be useful, but all of this? These people James is talking about were hoarding their wealth. They're accumulating more and more wealth far beyond what they could ever need or use. Wealth just stored away just to be stored away. Wealth that would never benefit the community. Hoarded wealth just for me, myself, and I. And James says that kind of wealth will testify against those people on the day of judgment because they dishonored God with their wealth. They hoarded it just for themselves. And they even used it as a weapon against other people. James' next warning. God hears the oppressed. Now, modern political theory can divide people into two groups. You're either the oppressors or you're the oppressed. And if you're the oppressors, you better cut it out. And if you're the oppressed, you rise up against the oppressors. And this kind of modern political theory. Well, that's not what James is talking about. He's not dividing people into two groups. He is saying, though, there are people, and he's writing to a specific situation he knows about, who are using their wealth to oppress. And he gives a very concrete, specific example. For listen, hear the cries of the field workers whom you have cheated of their pay. The cries of those who harvest your fields have reached the ears of the Lord of heaven's armies. Now, New Testament times, people were hired day by day to harvest crops. And in the tradition of the ancient world, they were paid at the end of each day. It was a command of biblical faith. If you owned land and you hired harvesters, you paid them at the end of every day. It's the way it was. When God freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, he gave them 10 commandments so they could stay free as a people. And then throughout the rest of the Old Testament, there's these codes of conduct, like you got to do it this way. This is God's way. One of them in Leviticus 19:13 says this: do not make your hired workers wait until the next day to receive their pay. Do not make them wait. Why? Because they need to buy food for their families for that day. They earned it. Pay them. And James is talking about landowners who had agreed to pay their workers at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, they didn't pay them. Not because they didn't have the money, They had the money. They just didn't want to part with it because they were hoarding. And of course, the unpaid workers are crying out to God. They weren't lazy. They worked hard. They had agreed upon a wage, and they weren't paid. And their family would go hungry that night. So while it's not true that we're all either oppressors or oppressed, James was addressing a situation in which greedy landowners cared nothing for their workers. And James warns them, you better watch out. God is listening to the cries of your unpaid workers. And then James gives his last and most serious warning, which sounds strange to our ears, but wealth can bankrupt our spiritual health. We don't think of wealth and bankruptcy going together, right? They're apart. If you're wealthy, you're not bankrupt. If you're bankrupt, you're not wealthy. But James says it's possible for a person to be financially wealthy, but spiritually bankrupt. And he got this from his brother Jesus. One day Jesus was teaching, told this story about a man who was financially rich, spiritually bankrupt. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have enough room for all my crops. Then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? That's not even the punchline. This is the punchline Jesus adds. Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. You have spent your years on earth in luxury, satisfying your every desire. You have fattened yourselves for the day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed innocent people who do not resist you. This is how bad it was. The last line. You have condemned and killed innocent people who did not resist you. This small group of rich people, these landowners hoarding their wealth, if anybody got in their way of business deals, they just killed them. After all, who can fight the rich? Wow. So before we move on, I'm just going to put up a blank slide just to set something straight. James is not saying, along with political modern theory, that we're either oppressors or oppressed. He's not saying that. He's not saying all wealth is evil. James is saying that hoarding wealth and not using it to benefit others is against God's plan. And then, of course, since I'm not aware of that we're super rich and oppressing the people of our community, what are we supposed to take away from this? Well, here's some things to ponder. We use our wealth to either honor or dishonor God. Notice I'm not saying the wealthy either honor or dishonor God. I'm saying whatever wealth we have, whether we think it a little or a lot, we use it to either honor God or dishonor God. Old Testament book of Proverbs says this: honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce. Then he will fill your barns with grain and your vats will overflow with good wine. So we're invited to honor God with whatever wealth he gives us. It's a gift from him. We work hard, but why can we work hard? God. We have skills and abilities, but why do we have skills and ability? God. Or as James says at the beginning of the book, whatever is good and perfect is a gift that comes down to us from God, our Father. So everything we have is a gift from God. And when we honor God with our wealth, which he gives, he blesses us. And then Proverbs says, these farmers who honor God with their wealth, full grain bins, vineyards produce great wine. I've been pondering this, how this works in my life, and maybe it works in your life. And I think it takes us a while to learn that honoring God with our wealth is an important part of life. And that honoring God with wealth actually brings us blessing. I think we have to grow up into this. And it takes a while. As a kid, whatever wealth we have, whatever money hits our hand from birthday or Christmas or a part-time job, I want to buy that. I want it. I got to go get it. I want to be happy. I'm going to buy that now. We're just self-focused. We get money, we spend it. That's kids. As we move into the adult world, we're forced to think about other people. If we marry, we have to learn to serve our spouse. If we have kids, we learn that parenting requires sacrifice. We're in the workforce. We have to deal with other people. I mean, entering the adult world requires us to get outside of ourselves and to think about others. And then we move through the adult life and get to the final chapter or two of our life, and all of a sudden our perspective matures and we're realizing, oh, life actually is short. Maybe even our remaining time is short. And we begin to think about this word legacy, which means, so what am I leaving behind me? How have I honored God with my life? Did I obey God's law of loving my neighbor as myself, or did I just love myself? And we may look back on our life and go, wow, I got some regrets. I did not honor God with my money. I need to seek his forgiveness, but I can make some adjustments. I can still adjust now. Or you may look back over your life and be thankful you did learn to honor God with your wealth that he gave to you, and he has blessed you. And that's great. As we grow up, we mature, and we learn to honor God with our wealth. There's an important truth that the rich people James was warning had just failed to learn. And I don't know why, but they just didn't get it. The more money we make, the more responsibility we have. It's that simple. Our culture says the more money you make, the more fun you can have. James' warning is very clear. The more money we make, the more responsibility we have to be a part of God's good work in the world. So the more money we make, the more money we can give to impact our community and our world for Jesus. Wealth is not for hoarding. Wealth is actually for benefiting people. Little story to break things up. If you like Fords, this story is for you. If you like Chevys, tough luck. In 1914, Henry Ford founded Ford Motor Company, announced that the workers assembling the Model Ts on his assembly line would be paid $5 a day, which was double the average daily wage at the time. Double. So Henry Ford had this vision of helping a nation own automobiles, so he took some of his own earnings and invested it in his workers so they could actually buy one of the cars they were assembling. So Henry Ford didn't just build Model Ts, he actually built financially sound families. He made money, of course, but he also shared profit with his workers. James' warning was to people that were hoarding their wealth, benefiting no one but themselves. And if Henry Ford had been like that, he would have paid his workers less than a daily wage, and they never would have been able to buy the cars that they were making, and the whole thing would have flopped. The more money we make, the more responsibility we have to honor God with our wealth. And while James' warning seems like there's no hope for the wealthy who dishonor God and hoard their wealth, Jesus has a way of turning things around for people. Like the story of Zacchaeus. He had to turn around. In Luke chapter 19 is this story. He's a chief tax collector for the Romans. He's a Jew. He's a traitor collecting taxes for the Romans. He put a bid in to the Romans saying, I'll pay you this much for the privilege of collecting taxes for you. And the Romans said, okay, we'll take your bid. It's really a bribe. And they said, Zacchaeus, we want this much money collected in taxes. And they said, and you can add on what you want. So Zacchaeus added on to recover his bribe money, and then he added on more so he'd become wealthy. And because he was a chief tax collector, he then solicited bribes from tax collectors underneath him, who also got wealthy. Zacchaeus was hoarding wealth, overtaxing people, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. It was a racket. Enter Jesus. Zacchaeus heard that Jesus is coming to town, wants to see him. He's got problems. He's short, plus nobody likes him. He's not safe for him to actually be in a crowd. So he runs out ahead of where Jesus will be walking, climbs up a tree just to see who Jesus is. He's heard about all the stuff he's done. Jesus walks by and then does something unexpected. He stops, looks up at Zacchaeus and says, come on down, I'm coming to your house for dinner. Zacchaeus is excited. Crowd is angry. Zacchaeus is a traitor who hoards his wealth, making everybody's life miserable. What would Jesus want with him? Well, Jesus knew why. Jesus knew Zacchaeus was ready for a change of heart, a turnaround. And it happened. While Jesus was in Zacchaeus' home, Zacchaeus stood up and said, I will give half my money to the poor, Lord, and if I've cheated anyone on their taxes, which he had, I will give them back 4 times as much. What a turnaround. Zacchaeus turned from hoarding his wealth, which he cheated, an entire region of tax money, to giving half of his wealth away and repaying fourfold his cheating. Turn things around. Just after meeting Jesus, he's going to use his wealth to benefit an entire region instead of draining an entire region. No more hoarding. No more dishonesty. He chose to honor God. Cornerstone honors God through our wealth, through our missions giving. We talk about this most Sundays, but just here's some things again. Every Sunday, 16% of what we put in the offering boxes with cash or checks or online giving goes to our missions budget, just directly. We do a lot of things with that. For instance, that money, we fund our food pantry that provides needed food for an average of 97 family units every Monday. From that money, we support Leah's Kids, which has a Christian home for orphans in Guatemala, kids that don't have parents. From that money, we support Pastor Henry McKiss's Christian school and orphanage in Entebbe, Uganda. He teaches and feeds 300 plus kids. They need the teaching about Jesus. They need the food. And from that money, we support Robin's Nest Orphanage in Jamaica. They provide loving Christian support for 20 kids who have been removed from their home, can't go back. From that money, we support Mark and Ruth Marquez in Fortaleza, Brazil, who run an after-school program, Christian education, and one tasty meal a day for some 300 kids from the slums. In our Christmas Eve offering last year, we supported Oscar Plencia and his Land of Hope ministry in Guatemala, reaching families living in the city dump with the good news of Jesus and with food and with medical care. So we're seeking as a church to honor God with our wealth by blessing people around the world at different places that really need it. Now, just for some next steps. Don't know if this happened to you. If it did, great. If not, it's fine. Are you having a Zacchaeus turnaround moment? You may have thought about the fact that Jesus is calling you to honor him with what wealth he gives you. It may have just dawned on you. If it has, that's kind of a turnaround moment, and you're beginning a journey like Zacchaeus did of, what does that look like? What can I do differently? And if God's Spirit's speaking to you about that, great. You're on a wonderful adventure. And I just want to offer you this prayer as much for me as for you. Pretty simple. Jesus, I need to break free from my fears about money. I want to use the wealth you've given me to make a difference in this world. Help me. Amen. And I simply ask that you pray that with me together now. Let's pray. Jesus, I need to break free from my fears about money. I want to use the wealth you've given me to make a difference in this world. Help me. Amen.